What if Ben and Gwen weren't related? Episode 2. Episode 2 starts with them riding down the street in the Rust Bucket, with Gwen telling Ben about charities that her parents donate to which Ben is sitting there across from her looking bored, and proceeds to ask, why would anyone want to do something like that? Annoyed, Gwen responds, donating to charities can help a lot of people in need, Ben. Though he didn't really seem interested, stating, yeah, whatever. As they continue, he then spots a building that was on fire and says, Grandpa, stop the Rust Bucket! After stopping, Ben dives out of the Rust Bucket, going into an alleyway, and activates the dial on the watch and calls out, It's hero time! For the first time in the series, before slapping it down, changing into Heat Blast, and then rushes into the building that was on fire to go and help. Finding a woman and a kid, he assures them, Name's Heat Blast and I'm here to help, and proceeds to absorb the flames around them in the room to clear a path leading to the stairs, though like in the show they crumble and he has to cut out a spot instead. He blasts the wall with the barred windows, though it was a larger chunk, and then dove out of the building, leaving them standing there at the giant hole in the wall for just a moment, as he then used his fire powers to cut out a chunk of the sidewalk and levitate it up to them. He says to the two of them, Get on, I'll lower you down to safety, to which, not having much choice, they do so. And he lowers the rock back down to the hole he'd cut it out of. Though now there was a circular crack in the concrete, it was at least safely put down. Then a crowd starts to form around them, and Heat Blast starts to say something before seeing the kid with gold sumo slammer cards. He excitedly asks where he got them from exactly. He says to the two of them, Get on, I'll lower you down to safety, to which, not having much choice, they do so. And he lowers the rock back down to the hole he'd cut it out of. Though now there was a circular crack in the concrete, it was at least safely put down. Then a crowd starts to form around them, and Heat Blast starts to say something before seeing the kid with gold sumo slammer cards. He excitedly asks where he got them from exactly. Before the kid could answer, the horn from the Rust Bucket started blasting, letting Ben know that it was time to go, and Gwen yells out there was a robbery going down and they needed to stop. Rather than riding inside the Rust Bucket, he hops onto the top of it so as to not set anything on fire, and they begin to drive off to go after the bank robbers. After catching up with the getaway vehicle, he throws a fireball which blows out one of their back tires, causing them to swerve as they tried to hit the brakes, slowing down the vehicle and crashing into a dumpster, though no one was hurt, thankfully. Heat Blast then rips off the door and tells them hands against the wall as he starts to time out. Changing back just before the cops showed up, he tells the officers to take them in, and a cop yells at Ben about it not being playtime, to which Ben gets annoyed and throws a rock at the back of the cop's head before realizing he probably shouldn't have done that, and runs off, calling the cops jerks. He gets in the Rust Bucket and they drive away before the cops could say or do anything else, mostly due to them being too busy with the bank robbers. We cut to later at the Mega Mart where the three of them were getting out of the Rust Bucket, and Ben mentioning, Looks like all that training we did really worked, as they went into the shop. Going inside of the shop, Ben did look around kind of bored, since he was never told about the Gold Sumo Slammers card. Being in the cereal box, Ben instead had wandered off into the chip aisle to see if there was anything good there, but not really finding anything he'd like to enjoy. This also means no gray matter trashing the place, and no getting into trouble for opening up all the boxes of cereal either. Rejoining his grandpa and Gwen, he then continues to wander around the store looking bored, before noticing the store had a complete set of cards on display, and so walked over to check it out. Though they started to feel something causing the ground to shake slightly. He goes over towards where the shaking was coming from as a TV drops in front of him, causing Ben to jump off to the side and hide under a jewelry display case that was safely bolted down, and the wall was heard being busted through. Looking from where he was hiding, Ben saw a giant green and red frog with some weird olive green skinned man that had long gray hair riding on its back. The man climbed off the frog and started to put things into a bag, to which Ben demanded to know what he was doing, only to have the frog knock over some sort of stack of boxes on top of him. As Ben began to get up, the man told him not to be a hero while getting back onto his mutant frog, and it began to hop away. Looking at his watch, Ben sees it was all green. Remember, no gray matter, so the watch was still fully charged and ready to go. Ben responds, "That's exactly what I'm gonna do," before activating the dial and changing into the dinosaur-looking form we'd seen the shape of in the previous episode. He looks surprised and says, "Accelerate? Works for me," and so races off to chase after the frog, finding them in the pet aisle, where the man was creating a mutant hamster and a mutant bird. Gwen called out to Ben, asking him to help, to which he throws a football at the hamster to distract it, calling out, "Back off, freak!" And when the hamster started to chase after him, he ran off further away from Max and Gwen. The hamster had knocked over some shelves, but thanks to his speed, Accelerate was able to outrun them and knocked another set of shelves over onto the mutant hamster before it could get up. The man that mutated the hamster was angry and called out that, "You haven't heard the last of Dr. Animo," before jumping from the frog to the mutated bird and flying off, breaking the skylight in the process, with the mutated frog jumping out onto the roof to follow them. It's then that the store manager comes up to Accelerate, happy to have the help. The manager thanked them for saving the store and asks if there's anything they could do to repay them. To which Accelerate looks back at the Sumo Slammer card set, starting to think about it, but then Gwen's words from earlier rang into his head. "Donating to charities can help a lot of people in need, Ben." Her words echoed as the dinosaur alien then looked at the manager. "I got an older cousin that once told me Megamart can't sell damaged items. Is that true?" He then questioned, to which the manager then responded that that was true, though a little confused, as Ben then asks, "Well, instead of throwing the stuff out, would you donate it to any charities that could use them instead?" The manager agreed to do just that as the watch started to time out, and so Accelerate ran off as fast as he could. We cut to Max driving the rust bucket while in search of Animo and his giant bird while talking to Ben. "That was a nice thing of you to ask, Ben," Grandpa Max had said about what Ben, as Accelerate, had just done. "Seems like Gwen is having a positive influence on you after all." To which Gwen then jokingly says, "And here I thought you weren't listening." Though Ben was about to respond, they found the giant bird and so began to chase after it. Max does slip up, saying that this is like the good old days before my retirement, prompting Gwen to ask what kind of plumber he was exactly. Max stutters that he was a darn good one, before asking if Gwen had found anything on her laptop yet. When she responds that Animo was some animal scientist who flipped out when he didn't win some science award for mutating animals. They actually chase Animo to the museum as his pets broke in and he was working on some device. Animo says, "Behold, my greatest idea yet," as he blasts a mammoth skeleton, causing it to regrow its body and start to stomp after the trio that were trying to stop him. Ben tells the two of them to go after Animo while he takes care of Jumbo, before activating the recharged watch. Slapping down the dial, he changes into the four-armed transformation and began to crack his knuckles, before attacking the mammoth, slamming it onto its sides. Max and Gwen run off to where Animo had gone, being confronted by the mutated bird. Seeing a spear from a display, Gwen gets an idea and takes it at the ready to fight the bird. When it screeched at them, she stabbed it in the inside of its mouth, causing it to clamp down onto the spear and break it. But the pain made it turn tail and run. They'd barely made it to Animo before he'd busted out of the museum on a reanimated T-Rex, saying something about reclaiming the award that should rightfully be his. Ben had barely handled the mammoth when Max and Gwen had gotten back to him, saying that they had to go after Animo. But the mutated bird flew by, grabbing Gwen in the process. Though Forearms tried to stop them, he'd timed out before he could even jump after them. This made Ben freak out, calling Gwen's name before turning back to his grandpa, stating that they had to go after them. Agreeing, the two of them dive into the rust bucket and drive off to chase after the bird. Unlike in the show, they don't lose track and chase them to the Washington Monument, where the bird left Gwen atop. Ben checks his watch as it flashed from red to green, and so he activated the dial, selecting one of the transformations. "Please be wings," he says, slapping down the dial and changing into the form of a giant flying insectoid, and takes off after Gwen. As Gwen began to slip and fall, Ben flew up and caught her, though the smell caught Gwen off guard. "Ugh, do you have to smell so bad in this form?" she questions, annoyed about the stench coming from Ben's new form. To which he responds, "Hey, at least it flies." Though Gwen still complains, "Yeah, but it still stinks." This gave Ben an idea, as he excitedly says, "Hey, Stinkfly, cool name," making Gwen roll her eyes. While trying to ditch the mutant bird, they'd seen Max at one of the windows waving his arms at them, and Ben flew over, passing Gwen to his grandfather and flying off, while the bird tried to go after Gwen again. Stinkfly flew into the bird, sending them downwards, and used his tail like a stinger, causing it to become paralyzed from the pain, and sending it crashing downwards onto the street. Max telling Stinkfly to go after Animo and that they would catch up. When Ben caught up to Animo, he was making some stupid speech while holding an award. He'd flown in and smacked against the T-Rex's head, distracting them and making the dinosaur strike them with his tail, sending him backwards into a wall, which he slid down, grunting in pain. Hearing the guy calling out for help, he'd missed the gold Sumo Slammer card that was sitting in a rubble pile, as he then flew off to save the guy, knocking the award from Animo's hand as he flew by, and making it fall and hit the ground and break. He laughed at how lame the guy was being. To which Animo tried to blast Ben with the ray, though he was able to avoid it. He'd spat some sort of alien goo at the man, blinding him as it hit him and the T-Rex in the face. And while they were distracted, Stinkfly ripped the helmet off of Animo, throwing it onto the ground and breaking it, causing the T-Rex to return to just a skeleton again, along with the other mutated animals returning to their normal state. The episode ends with Animo being arrested and our heroes returning to the road trip, with Gwen thanking Ben for saving her, and Ben making stupid jokes to annoy her just for the fun of it.